Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we are in Warframe for part 2 of the tier list. If you haven't watched the first part, you can check the link in the top right corner or the link in the description, it's the same one. But before doing that, I recommend listening to this part of the video because I have updated the rules to be clearer and more objective. I'll put them on screen right now, so let's go through them real quick. Basically, how I'm going to rank each Warframe will be based on these three criteria. Those are survivability, killing power, and support /CC/other special stuff they can do. Each criteria has 0 to 3 stars, and I'll show on screen whatever each stat means and why I gave those Warframes those amount of stars. So keep this in mind for both part 1 and part 2 of the tier list. With that said, there are some changes to previous ranked Warframes based on both feedback and some of my testing. So first of all, we have Atlas. He gets 2 stars for killing power to put him in the same range as other similar Warframes. Then we have Excalibur that has been upgraded to 1 star survivability because he does have his one that makes him invulnerable, so it's okay to have 1 star there. He is okay at surviving, it's not exactly awful, so he deserves 1 star. And he also gets 2 stars for killing power for the same reason as Atlas. And finally we have Hydroid. I've been playing with him for a couple hours after the first video, and he does not exactly feel that good for me, so these are going to be my new rankings. But again, if you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments. He gets 1 star for survivability because he can get some armor and I guess stun enemies a little bit, but he is still very squishy and he lacks any other form of damage reduction or other ways to avoid damage other than using his shoe, so he gets only 1 star there. Then he gets 2 stars for killing powers because he does deal some okay damage. He can also armor shape enemies and also apply viral if you're using the augment. And finally he gets 3 stars for support because of course he can apply viral and corrosive, which is awesome. He can do that in a huge AoE, which is very awesome. And he also has access to Pilfering Swarm, which is the augment that makes enemies drop more loot. So yeah, he deserves 3 stars. He's an okay support / special ability Warframe. So yeah, I think he deserves 3 stars right there. These were the important changes, but we also have one minor correction, and that is Dagat gets 2 stars for support because she can also slow enemies if she's using an augment. So yeah, I think both applying viral and slowing enemies is worth 2 stars. So there we go, she gets 2 stars. Oh, and by the way, this is the tier list I've been working on with the new rankings, the new updates and everything, so you can see the situation we are in right now, and I'll also post the full version at the end of the video. You can also find the files to the Google Sheets and everything else I've used for the video in the description if you're interested. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I also received some comments about Inaros being higher ranked than Chroma or Warframes like that, but that's mostly because of the way I am ranking the Warframes, the 3 criteria I mentioned. So it's normal for things like this to happen. It's not this is not supposed to be a meta tier list. It's just me ranking Warframes based on these specific criteria, and that's how I'm going to do it for the second part. Okay, that's it for the introduction, so let's move on to the other Warframes I haven't ranked yet, and I will see you at the end of the video. Alright, moving on, we have the Frog Jelly Ivara, and she is still Ivara. Nothing has really changed. She has access to permanent invisibility, and also she can manipulate enemy AI with her quiver, so she gets 2 out of 3 for survivability. In terms of killing power, she gets a 2 out of 3, mostly because she's limited by her weapons. You need to use silent weapons or equip the hush mods on your weapons to make them silent, or else you'll break your invisibility. She's not as good as Sight at killing enemies, so that's why she gets 2 out of 3. And in terms of special powers and support abilities, she can grant anybody in her team invisibility with her quiver arrows, so that's kinda cool. She also has access to Prowl, which can grant her extra loot from enemies, and I think she deserves 2 stars just for that. Alright, another new-ish Warframe from last year, we have Jade, and she is also one of the strongest Warframes in the game. In terms of survivability, she gets a 2 out of 3 because she can easily die if you're not careful, but she can slow down enemies with her 3, which is pretty solid. She can also kill enemies before they even reach her with her 1, so that's also pretty cool. She gets passive healing as well. Moving on to killing power, she becomes able to delete enemies at the press of a button thanks to her exalted weapons. And yeah, overall she is great at killing enemies, but she still needs to aim at them unless you're using your alt fire while Light's Judgment is on the ground. So I'm going to give her a 2 out of 3, but she can be moved to 3 out of 3 if you think it's worth it. In terms of special powers and support abilities, she gets 3 out of 3 stars. Again, she can slow down enemies, armor strip them, she can grant the whole team a massive amount of strength or damage increase or shields per second, like just insane amounts of stuff for pretty much free. And I think she deserves these 7 stars, although I think 8 could also be the final result. So I'm going to give her 7 for now, but I think we can move on to 8 if you guys think she's worth it. Then we have Khora, and Khora has not changed at all. She is still Loot Mummy if you're using the augment for her Strangledom, and she has infinite damage on her 1, so yeah, that's pretty much 3 out of 3 for killing stuff. In terms of survivability, she is a bit hard to play unless you are really focusing on shield gating. Other than that, I think she's okay. And for that, she gets a 1 out of 3. Not exactly hard to play or to survive with, but if you get distracted, you will die. So it's a bit difficult. So 1 out of 3 I think is more than enough. Killing power, as we said, she gets 3 out of 3 because of her whip with infinite damage pretty much, and the fact that she can share that damage to all enemies in Strangledom and also the one affected by a snare. So yeah, 3 out of 3 right there. And for support and special powers, she has access to Venari, which is a great utility, and also extra loot with her Strangledom, not counting all the CC she has thanks to a snare and Strangledom, so she gets 3 out of 3 stars in this category as well. In total, she gets 7 out of 9, and I think she deserves it. Alright, we move on to Koumei, and oh boy, what a disappointment this Warframe was. Her kit is a complete mess. Her survivability is close to none because Omamori only works once every 3 seconds, and that's it. So if you take damage and you avoid that damage, then you have to wait 3 seconds, and in those 3 seconds enemies can kill you, and that's why she gets a 0 out of 3. Moving on to killing enemies, she is pretty good at that. If enemies are able to take elemental damage, that is, and a lot of elements at once, thanks to Banraku and Kumihimo, although this damage won't scale that well in higher level missions, and that's why she gets 2 out of 3. And in terms of support and special power, she doesn't really do anything for support, but she has access to some very cool powers like her passive that grants one of her weapons the ability to apply random status effects for 60 seconds, which is pretty cool. And Omikuji gives you a random decree once you complete the challenge, so that's kinda cool, I guess. But that's pretty much it. So I'm going to give her 1 out of 3 stars for special powers. That's actually more than she deserves. She's just not that great at all. Moving to an actual great Warframe, we have Kullervo, and this is the melee god. If you want to use a Warframe that has access to a stupid amount of damage buffs for his melee weapons, you have to use Kullervo. First of all, he has access to Overguard, so surviving with Kullervo is not that hard. I'm going to give him a 2 out of 3, but this can drop to a 1 out of 3 if you are staying in a mission for too long. In terms of killing enemies, he has access to both Wrathful Advance for massive crit chance boost and also free heavy attacks. And he also has access to Collective Curse, which makes enemies share the damage they take. So yeah, combine those two and everything that you see will just die at the click of those 2 buttons, so that's pretty cool. So I'm going to give him 2 out of 3 stars just because he is limited by line of sight. In terms of support powers or CC, he doesn't really bring anything to the team, so he is gonna get 0 out of 3. It's okay for him to have those stats. And now we move on to Lavos. Lavos sadly has been replaced by Sight of 9 in pretty much every category. All he does is just done better by Sight of 9. In terms of survivability, he has literally nothing other than his Ophidian Bite to restore some HP. And if you lose HP, you are pretty much gonna die anyway with Lavos. So he gets 0 out of 3. He doesn't really have anything at all. And also, since his abilities do not consume energy, you're not even a shield gate with those abilities that convert energy to shields. So yeah, that's kind of very sad. In terms of damage, he is alright. He can kill enemies if they are low level, I guess. So he gets a 1 out of 3, and that's being generous. So far, he is not doing that well. And finally, in terms of support or special abilities, he just doesn't really have anything that interesting other than the fact that he can apply elements to his abilities. But I'm gonna give him 1 star just for that. And so in total he gets 2 stars. You know what? He gets 2 stars. I don't care. He's not survivable at all. Doesn't really matter. He will die in seconds. He gets 2 out of 9 stars. He is just not good, just use Saito 9. It is just a better Warframe overall. If you really want to use Lavos, just use him in Railjack, because that's the only reason to use Lavos. We are moving on to Limbo, and Limbo is a difficult Warframe to play for especially new players, but other than that, his survivability can be either 3 stars or 0 stars, depends on your skills. So I'm going to give him a 1 just to be like safe, because it requires some skills to stay alive with Limbo, and also a lot of dashing and moving between his rifts, and yeah, it's not easy, so 1 out of 3 stars I think it's okay. Moving to the killing powers, he has access to some very big multipliers, especially with his 3 augment, and there's that, I guess. That's pretty cool, but again, not that great of a Warframe for killing stuff if you do not know how to use him, so I'm going to give him 1 out of 3, mostly because of the difficulty. He's not a brain-dead Warframe. And moving on to special powers and support stuff, he has access to the Rift itself, which is insanely strong. He can lock down defense targets unless they're being shot by Eximos units. That is the only thing that can affect him, other than nullifiers. He can also put allies in the Rift to grant them passive energy regeneration, so that's pretty cool. Like he's interesting for support, so I'm going to give him 2 stars, and in total he gets 4 out of 9, which for Limbo I think it's okay, and that's mostly because if you are a new player or someone who has never played Limbo, it's not going to be easy, so this is pretty much what you can expect from this Warframe. Moving on, we have Loki, and Loki only really has access to his invisibility and his decoy. That's pretty much all he has in his kit. Not exactly the best thing ever. He can also disarm enemies. That's also interesting, but again, not exactly the best thing ever. And in terms of survivability, he gets 2 out of 3, just because he has access to a very long invisibility, and he can also hang from walls for 10 times longer than normal, so you can just stay like on a wall for like minutes and nobody can see you or hit you, and you can just decoy enemies, so it's okay. You will always be able to like avoid damage, which is pretty cool. In terms of killing power, he really needs some good weapons to be able to kill enemies. So I'm gonna give him a 1 out of 3. It's really hard for him to actually kill stuff by himself unless you rely on a very strong weapon. Even the augment for his 1 does have some niches, but it's still not as good as other Warframe's abilities. So, and in terms of special powers and support abilities, he doesn't really have anything for his team other than, I guess, disarming enemies, so 1 star from there. He can troll allies with switch teleport, I guess, which is pretty cool. But for a very old Warframe like Loki, I think that's okay. He does need a rework. I think he does need some changes to his 3 and 4, and maybe his 1 as well. Alright, we have reached Mag, and Mag is probably one of the strongest Warframes you can get at the start of the game, since she is a starter. Her survivability becomes better the more time you spend playing with her. Her 4 can pretty much fill her shields in 1 cast, so that's very strong for shield gating. Also, all the enemies inside Magnetize cannot shoot at you, so you don't have to worry about enemies if they are inside the bubble, which is great. And that is why I'm going to give her a 3 out of 3 stars, because if you know how to play Mag, you are never going to die. Moving on to killing potential, she is one of the best nuking Warframes, although her nukes are more spread out because she has to use her Magnetize quite a lot. She gets 2 out of 3 stars right there. She just cannot nuke a whole map like Saryn or Ember, so yeah, she gets 2 out of 3. I think that is okay. In terms of special powers and support stuff, her 4 also replenishes shields for all allies. Her second ability makes the enemy that is targeted take a lot more damage, so they're gonna die in seconds. Also, if you're using the augment for her 4th ability, she can also armor strip enemies, so I think she is worth 3 stars for support. So in total, she gets 8 stars out of 9. I think that is a massive amount of points for her, and she deserves all of them. She is just that strong. Alright, then we have Mesa, and Mesa is quite survivable, especially with her 2 and 3 active pretty much all the time since they have an insane amount of duration. So I'm going to give her a 2 out of 3, and that is mostly because if a melee unit attacks you, you can get one-shotted very easily. But in terms of killing power, she is 3 out of 3, even 4 out of 3. Like, she deals such a massive amount of damage with her regulators. She's just a machine gun. She just deletes stuff in seconds. It's just beautiful. And finally, in terms of support abilities and special stuff, her 2 can be shared by allies as well, one at a time, so not exactly that great. And I mean, she takes care of enemies before allies can do pretty much anything, so I guess that is helpful for the team. Yeah, that's definitely helpful for the whole team. So she gets 1 star out of 3. In total, she gets 6 stars out of 9, and I think that is okay. She's not exactly a great teammate to have if you want to enjoy the mission, so yeah, 6 stars out of 9, I think it's okay. Moving on, we have Mirage, and this Warframe has changed drastically after the elemental changes, and she is now able to map clear at the same speed as Saryn pretty much, if not even faster, and she also has access to damage reduction or damage increase at the press of a button, so yeah, that's pretty solid. In terms of survivability, she gets a 2 out of 3 because her damage reduction is great and all, and her kind of a confusion with her doppelgangers. In terms of killing power, she is 3 out of 3. Either if you build her for your Prism and your Sleight of Hand with the Augment, or if you build her for your Eclipse, she is still gonna delete enemies in seconds. And for support and special powers, she is not exactly either of those, but she is a good teammate if you want to level up stuff in Elite Sanctuary Onslaught, so she gets a star for that. I think it's more than enough. Alright, we have reached Loot Daddy Nekros, and this Warframe still is Loot Daddy Nekros, but now you can also do the funny meme build with summons, which is surprisingly good actually, so that's interesting. In terms of survivability, he is a 3 out of 3. I am pretty sure he is one of the few frames that can both health tank and shield gate, and also has access to a massive amount of damage reduction. So yeah, he just is very hard to kill, and also having access to 7 shadows or even more that can also draw enemy fire and enemy attention, yeah, that also makes you more survivable, which is very cool. In terms of killing power, he gets a 2 out of 3 because he has access to 35 that can armor shape enemies. His clones actually deal an okay amount of damage, especially with the Sambo build, and if you're using any kind of good weapon, he is able to clear tileset in a solid amount of time. So yeah, overall I think 2 stars is okay, not on the same level as Mirage or anything like that, but he is still strong. And finally, for support and special skill, he has access to Desecrate, which is just free loot, and that is awesome. He also has access to passive healing when enemies die around him, so that's pretty cool. I think he deserves 3 stars just because he is Loot Daddy, and yeah, I'm gonna give him 3 stars. So in total he gets 8 out of 9. Again, another great, awesome Warframe. He just isn't exactly God tier, but still one of the best Warframes in the game, at least for me. Another amazing Warframe is Nezha. In terms of survivability, he has access to damage reduction with his Warding Yellow, so it's a solid 2 out of 3. It's gonna be really hard for you to die, especially if you run around quite a lot. For killing powers, he is 3 out of 3 stars, and that is because Divine Spears with the Augment pretty much makes him insanely strong. He can also bypass walls, he just cares about range, and enemies will just die the moment you kill one of them, so very, very strong ability and augment. And he also has access to Blazing Chakram that can apply like millions of hit stacks and also make enemies drop more energy and health orbs. Definitely 3 out of 3 stars. Now for support and special skill, he has an augment for Warding Yellow that makes him able to cast the ability on allies, but this has 50% efficacy, so not exactly gonna be amazing, but it's something you can do, I guess. And other than that, he's able to make enemies drop energy orbs and health orbs, so I guess there's also that. Nothing else really, so I'm gonna give him 1 out of 3 because yeah, the Warding Halo stuff doesn't really matter for me. Alright, then we have Nidus, And I mean, he is still Nidus, he is okay. He is almost immortal if you play him correctly. I kind of want to give him 3 stars just because it's really hard for him to die. Moving to killing power, he has access to grouping, and he's one that can deal massive amounts of damage, so that's solid. I think he deserves a 2 out of 3. As for support and special powers, he has access to Parasitic Link that can grant allies a massive amount of power strength, so that's pretty cool. And his Ravenous can summon those maggots that can deal some more damage, and Ravenous also heals you and allies standing inside it, so that's pretty cool. He also has access to grouping, so I think he deserves that 3 stars right there at least. He's a very solid Warframe in groups, and yeah, that's pretty much Nidus. Alright, then we have Nova, and Nova, she's a 9-star. I'm not even gonna spend too much time on her. She just has everything. She has survivability, she has access to 90% damage reduction all the time pretty much. She can slow down enemies or speed them up, it really depends on what she is doing, and they also take 200% more damage when they are affected by molecular prime. She has access to nukes like antimatter drop, and even her one with the augment can be a nuke as well, so overall an amazing support. And also she can make enemies drop health orbs and energy orbs. You know what, she's a 9-star, she's a god, doesn't really matter, she just is everything, and she deserves to be in god tier. Next on the list we have Nyx, and she just received a huge rework. Her survivability is definitely a 3 out of 3, she pretty much cannot take any damage, so yeah, she just cannot die. In terms of damage, she has to rely a bit too much on her psychic bolts, but they can now spread to other enemies, so I think it's okay to give her a 2 out of 3. And for special powers and support, she can literally mind control enemies, and that's pretty cool. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it, so she gets a 1. So in total she scores 6 stars, which is pretty good. She's in a much better position than before, so yeah. Good job, Nyx. Moving on, we have Oberon, and Oberon is just in a very sad spot. Since Trinity's rework, he just has fallen. He has pretty much nothing to really offer to the whole team. Everything he does, Trinity does better. So yeah, I don't see any reason why you would play Oberon. Like, his survivability is just not there anymore. Even if you're using his augment for renewal, that has a cooldown of 90 seconds. So I'm going to give him a 1 just for trying, but that's pretty much it. In terms of killing power, he can kill stuff. He can armor shape with Reckoning and Hollow Ground, but it's very energy expensive. It's a bit also annoying to do. So I'm gonna give him a 0 out of 3. He's not really that good at killing enemies. It's kind of sad, but it makes sense. He's more supposed to be a support. The problem is that for support and special abilities, he does do the stuff. I think he deserves the 3 stars, but it's just not enough for what he's supposed to do. So even if he has 3 stars in support, he still gets only 4 stars. And that's still being generous. Okay, then we have Octavia. She's a 9-star. I'm not gonna explain why. You know, Octavia. She just is. Yeah, she just is Octavia. Nothing else to say about her. Moving on, we have Protea, and Protea, I think she also deserves 9 stars. She has access to infinite amount of shields with her 1, so surviving with her is gonna be insanely easy. She also has access to temporal anchor that will make you invulnerable if you happen to die, so that's pretty cool. Her turret deals massive amounts of heat damage, and that can kill pretty much anything, so there's that. And finally, for support stuff, she has access to dispensary, and that is free energy, ammo, and health orbs for the whole team. So she also allows allies to regenerate shields through her 1, and yeah, she can also lock down entire rooms with her 1 if you use the tap version. I think 9 stars for her, it's just deserved. Okay, and then we have Qorvex, and ah boy, this Warframe just is a bit sad. He's not that great at surviving at all because he has to rely on his armor, and that doesn't really work. He has his 3, but that's only status protection. He still takes the full damage, so that's kind of sad. He only has his 4 that makes him invulnerable for a couple seconds, but that's it. So I'm going to give him a 1 out of 3. Moving to the killing power, he has access to some nice combos with his 4 and his Chorinka pillar. Point is, other Warframes can use Saryn Capillar better than him, which is interesting, but that's somehow the case. So I'm going to give him a 2 out of 3, but yeah, he just isn't that great. And in terms of support and special powers, he can kind of group up enemies with Containment Wall, and he can kind of support his teammates with Magic Guard, but it's nothing crazy, and I guess he can also slow down enemies with his 1 a bit, but yeah, he only gets 2 stars for that. So in total, he gets 5 stars out of 9. Alright, moving on, we have Revenant, the literally immortal Warframe. You just press Mesmer Skin and you are now immortal, so 3 out of 3 for survivability. For his killing power, he has access to Dance Macabre and, well, Reeve if you wanna like deal percentage based damage, but it's a bit weird to use. So killing power mostly relies on the weapons you are using. So I'm going to give him a 1 out of 3. And for your support stuff, he gets 3 out of 3 just because he has an augment for Mesmer Skin that lets him apply Mesmer Skin to his allies. So all allies are also pretty much immortal now, so he gets 3 stars from there. He is a very boring Warframe because you just only usually press 2 and that's it, but he also is really strong. Another boring but strong Warframe is Rhino, and that is because he has access to Iron Skin. That is a massive amount of overguard because this has been changed, and yeah, overall it's okay, and it makes you survive for quite a long time. And if you also add the rolling guard, you are very safe. So he gets a 2 out of 3 just because it might be a bit hard to survive in high level missions, but for everything else in the game you shouldn't have any problems. In terms of killing power, he has access to Roar, and that is the not nerfed Roar from Helmet, so he gets a massive amount of damage boost, and that allows him to, well, use his weapons at full potential. He still gets only 1 star out of 3 because he doesn't really have any AoE in his kit. And Roar is also the reason why he gets 2 stars out of 3 for support. Doesn't have anything else other than Roar in his kit, and again, Roar can be used by other Warframes through Helmet, so yeah, he deserves 2 stars because he has Roar and some CC with Rhino Stomp, but that's pretty much it. Rhino is still very solid, you should definitely give him a try. Alright, we have reached Saryn, and Saryn is sadly not a 9-star, and that's mostly because she's a bit on the squishy side. She has access to Molt and Molt's Augment, which also allows her to get some HP back, but to stay alive you really have to rely on your movement speed and running around quite a lot and not being hit by enemies, because otherwise you are a very squishy spore girl that's gonna die in a couple shots. So I'm going to give her 1 star just because she has Molt, which is a kind of a distraction, and she also gets a movement boost, so she can run away faster, but yeah, she is not exactly the tankiest Warframe ever. In terms of killing power though, yeah, she still is a monster and she deserves those 3 stars. Spore and Miasma and Toxic Slash are 3 insanely strong abilities and she has access to all of them, so yeah, very strong overall. And for support and special skills, she doesn't really have that much, but she can apply Viral and Corrosive with her abilities, so she deserves at least 1 star. Actually, I'm going to give her 2 stars because she is a great teammate in ESO, and I gave Mirage 1 star for that, so yeah, she gets 2 stars in total. Yeah, that's pretty much it. She's similar to Mirage, so that's why they are similarly ranked. They are both DPS Warframes. They do not care too much about being tanky because everything around them is going to be dead in seconds, so that's why they have almost the same rank. Alright, next on the list is Sevagoth. He is a very expensive Warframe to build, requiring multiple formas on multiple different things. But other than that, he literally is immortal. You can like come back to life just by killing like 5 enemies with your shadow form that also one-shots them, so he gets 3 out of 3 for free. In terms of killing power, I am gonna give him a 2 out of 3. He is able to clear huge groups of enemies, he just needs to go there, so he has to move around quite a lot. And in terms of support powers, he has access to Gloom, and his shadow can debuff enemies, so it's okay. I'm gonna give him 1 star there, I think it's more than enough. So in total he gets 6 stars, and that's gonna be Sevagoth. Moving on, we have Styanax, and Styanax in terms of survivability, he is near Dante. They both can get massive amounts of overguard, and Styanax does that while also dealing damage with his 4, and also and he's also able to share that overguard with allies, so that's pretty good. So he gets 3 stars for survivability, and not to mention he also has access to free shields, so that's also more survivability. In terms of killing power, he can spam his final stand, and that deals millions and millions of slash damage plus blast damage, so enemies will just die in seconds, especially if you prime them with viral. So yeah, they won't last that long, which is great. So he gets 2 out of 3 stars, mostly because he has to spam that quite a lot, and it's quite an expensive ability, but his 3 kind of fixes that. It's a bit of a balance you have to find, but I think it's okay to give him 2 out of 3 stars. And in terms of support and special powers, again, his 3 is just such an incredible ability that also grants shields and energy to all allies in range. And once again, you can also give everybody overguard with your 4, so he gets 3 stars for support. He pretty much does everything you want from a Warframe. He can also defense strip enemies with Taro Strike, and yeah, he's just that good. He can also group up enemies with Axios Javelin, multiple things. He really is a Warframe worth of 8 stars, and that's what he gets. Alright, we are almost done. We are at Titania, and I think she is alright. Her survivability is not that high. She doesn't really have that much survivability at all, other than being very small, and even that is not enough, and that's why I'm going to give her a 0 out of 3. As for her killing power, her pixie form allows her to deal massive amounts of damage both with her melee and her pistols, which is great. The point is that you still have to aim your weapon at enemies. There's no like big AoE stuff happening, so it's not great. I think 1 out of 3 stars is what she deserves. She's more of a single target unit, and she mostly specializes on that. As for her support or special abilities, she has many cool stuff in her kit, like status immunity with her 1, which is awesome. Her second ability does a lot of stuff, and her 3 as well can also CC enemies, which is great, but I think I'm going to give her 1 out of 3 because she doesn't do that much for the whole team. So in total, she gets 2 stars, and that's very sad because I really like Titania. The point is that she just is, she's a bit weird to play, and if you like her, that's okay. This tier list is not meta related, is mostly my way of categorizing Warframe, so that's why she gets 2 stars. That doesn't mean she's bad, that's just how she ranks on this tier list. Alright, moving on to Trinity, and she is 5 out of 3 in terms of survivability because she just cannot die. She literally has so much damage reduction and so many ways to like go back to life and heal and stuff. It's just overkill. She has a free revive on Well of Life, plus healing, plus status immunity. She has damage redirection with her 3. She has damage reduction with her 4. And also by casting the ability, you get back all your shields and HP, and that applies to your allies. So yeah, you're just not gonna die with Trinity, and if you do, I do not know how you manage to do it. It's like, it's almost impossible. But in terms of killing power, she's a 0 out of 3. She literally has nothing that can boost her damage other than an augment for her 4. And even that, it's just not enough. It gives you some more crit stats, but in the end, you're not going to deal that much damage if you're using Trinity. You're probably going to focus on keeping your allies alive. And finally, for support and special skills, she gets 3 out of 3 stars. She is healing, energy in the form of energy vampire, and a free revive. Literally everything you want from a support Warframe. Alright, next on the list we have Valkyr, and she is 3 out of 3 for survivability because she's not gonna die if you build her correctly and you just stay in your Hysteria form, which you can pretty much do indefinitely as long as you keep your energy up. In terms of killing power, she's a 2 out of 3 because she has to move around to actually kill stuff because she's a melee Warframe. Other than that, she is insanely strong and she can kill stuff in one shot, which is awesome. For support and special skills, she has access to Warcry that can be applied to allies and that grants them more speed and armor increase, which is it's something, so I'm gonna give her 1 star there. So in total, she also ranks 6 stars, and yeah, I think that's a solid score. Then we have Trainman Vauban, and Trainman is a very underestimated Warframe. He is not that great at surviving. I'm going to give him a 0 out of 3, but in terms of killing power, he is up there. I'm going to give him a 2 out of 3 just because it might become expensive to keep on killing stuff with his Vortex and his Fallen Strike, and maybe also your Fleshed Orb, but other than that, he is able to clear enemies in seconds while just being AFK, which is awesome. And for his support stuff, he has access to Basil that can strip enemies' armor, and he is a great CC Warframe in general because he has massive AoEs, so that's pretty good. I think he deserves one more star there. He doesn't really have that much else other than, I guess, his 2 that can also grant you more damage, but it's not a great damage boost, and it's also only for your weapon, so yeah, not exactly the best. And it's okay, he's an old Warframe, he might need some changes to his abilities, but he still works, and he is still able to clear enemies, especially in ESO. It is just awesome, you should definitely give it a try. And here we have the last starter Warframe, Volt. This Warframe probably is the best Warframe you can get at the start of the game, just because of the massive potential he has, and also because he just has access to so many great abilities that you will enjoy for the whole game. In terms of survivability, he has access to an augment for his 4 that lets him regenerate shields, so it's quite easy to survive if you spam his 4. You can also hide behind your electric shield, and that will prevent any damage coming from projectiles, so that is awesome. And yeah, that's just one way to stay alive, so I'm gonna give him a 2 out of 3. In terms of killing power though, he is a 3 out of 3, and that is because of both of his 4 and his 1. First of all, his 4 is amazing in ESO, it just clears waves after wave in just seconds. It's awesome if you build him correctly. And his 1 with the augment can give you more electricity damage, and if you're using a melee weapon, that means free melee influence. So yeah, you can just keep on attacking enemies with electricity and spreading melee influence and dealing massive amounts of damage to all enemies in range. And finally, for support and special abilities, he can also grant allies shields with the augment, so that's awesome. His shield grants you more electricity damage and also boosts your critical damage, which is awesome. He has access to speed that can boost your and your allies' attack speed and reload speed, which are all insane stats to have. And if you're using the augment for his 1, that electricity buff also applies to allies in range, so every ability he has can also affect allies, so he gets 3 stars in support. So in total he gets 8 stars, and yeah, he deserves all of them. He is just an amazing Warframe overall. Moving on, we have Voruna, and I have literally never played this Warframe other than using her to rank up. So if you want to share your opinion, do it in the comments and we can talk there. Okay, and then we have Wisp, and well, Wisp is probably one of the strongest support characters in the game. In terms of survivability, she doesn't really shine because giving only more HP and HP regen isn't exactly a way to survive in Warframe, but she has access to mass blind, pretty much infinite amount of invulnerability with her too, so yeah, you just won't be able to die if you play her correctly. I'm going to give her 2 out of 3 just because she doesn't really have any damage reduction in her kit itself, but she also has access to invisibility when she is in the air and she's not shooting a weapon, so that's pretty good. I think a 2 out of 3 is solid for her. As for killing power, she has access to Soul Gate, which is not great, so we're going to focus mostly on Bridge Surge and her haste mod that grants her more fire rate, reload speed and attack speed, so she can become a very nice weapon platform, and Bridge Surge will deal more radiation damage once in a while when you proc it, so I'm going to give her a 1 out of 3 just because she doesn't really have anything that amplifies her damage by a lot other than her haste mode, but yeah, I think she's okay. She can definitely deal some damage. And for support and special abilities, she gets 3 stars because of all her modes plus Bridge Surge, so yeah, she definitely deserves those 3 stars. Alright, we have reached Wukong, and Wukong is still Wukong. He gets 2 stars in survivability because he has access to Defy that grants him additional armor and also makes him invulnerable for a few seconds. Oh, and he has also access to 3 additional lives for free thanks to his passive. In terms of damage, he doesn't really deal that much damage with his Exalted Iron Staff, but he is an okay Warframe to use with both melee and primary weapons, but his clone can deal some nice damage, so he gets a 1 out of 3 stars. As for support and special skills, he also doesn't really do that much, so I'm gonna give him a 1 out of 3, and that's mostly because he can use Defy to taunt enemies, and that kind of helps your team, but other than that, he only works mostly for himself and for himself only, so yeah, not exactly a team player. Alright, we are almost done. We have reached Xaku, and they are weird. I kind of want to give him 3 stars for survivability, but at the same time, they're not immortal because they have to rely on both 75% evasion and 75% damage reduction while being in vast time, but that's not enough to reach 3 stars, so they get 2 stars. In terms of damage though, they score 3 stars because Xato's Whisper is such an amazing ability, also Grasp of Loki. All of that combined with Vast Untime that debuffs enemies and makes them take more void damage, and the loss that can strip enemies of their defenses, yeah, they can definitely shred through enemies in seconds while pretty much being AFK. And thanks to the armor strip and Vast Untime slow, they get 2 stars in support abilities because at least they give something to the team. In total they score 7 stars, and I think that's the perfect score. Moving on, we have the anime girl Yareli, and in terms of survivability, I think it's okay to give her 2 stars, but I think she's able to reach 3 stars if you play her correctly, so I'm going to give her 2 stars for now. In terms of damage, she has access to both Riptide, Snares is also quite an interesting ability, and her Aqua Blades also have that augment that makes them deal a lot of damage, but she mostly specializes on dealing damage with secondary weapons, and she is able to delete enemies with her secondary weapons, so that is awesome. I think she deserves 2 stars here as well. For her support powers, she can debuff enemies with her first ability and she can group them with her 4, so I think she deserves 2 stars for that. And in total she scores 6 stars. Alright, and now we have Zephyr, last Warframe on the list. Finally, because my throat is pretty much dying, I've been talking for way too long. My recording has reached 2 hours, so that's awesome. But yeah, Zephyr, she's insane. In terms of survivability, I think she deserves 2 stars just because of Turbulence that makes her immune to any projectiles, unless they are explosive weapons. In that case, they might still hit you if they hit the ground near you, so you need to be a bit careful, and melee enemies can still hit you, but once again, if you spend most of the time in the air, as you should with Zephyr, you shouldn't have too many problems surviving. In terms of damage, she is 3 out of 3 stars, and that is because of her tornadoes. Those things are just insanely broken, and there are many videos explaining why. I'm not gonna go too much into it, both because I do not exactly know the math, and both because I don't have the time or the throat left, so yeah. There we go. And finally, in terms of support stuff, she can group up enemies and she can kill them before your allies can do anything. So yeah, not much, just 1 star is gonna be more than enough right there. So in total, she gets 6 stars. And yeah, that's pretty much going to be the whole tier list. Okay, and yeah, we are done. I am going to take some medications now because my throat is now killing me again. And I hope you guys enjoyed the tier list. I'll have the full tier list on screen now so you can see the whole tier list. This tier list is not meta at all. This mostly compares Warframes based on the 3 criteria I explained at the start of the video. So of course, take this with a grain of salt. It's not ranking them based on their role. It's just how good they are, in my opinion, based on those 3 criteria. You can of course disagree with me. It's completely fine. Just don't be rude or annoying in the comments. I will now get some medications, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, remember to leave a like and subscribe for more content. I hope I get back soon on track because I am bored of being sick. And yeah, thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye bye.